Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim wa bihi nasta'in. In the name of God, the all gracious, all merciful. We take refuge in God from Satan, the rejected. In our previous discussion, we started our first session on the issue of the communications and the propagation. We had a short introduction to the discussion, and also we defined the communication in two ways of the technical and also the literal meaning. And also we elaborated a bit on the elements of the communication, and also we wrapped it up with the discussion of the meaning and the centrality of the meaning in the communication. So we start from this point, that what is the meaning and where is the meaning in the message or in the process of the communication. You know, there is a formula in communication. It is said that if M and M prime is equal with 1, communication is safe and sound, and it is in its best mood. What does it mean? It means that if the meaning which is in the mind of the producer and the sender is equal with the M prime, the meaning which is in the mind of the receiver or the reader is the same, is equal with 1, so this communication is correct. Elaboration. For example, in different countries, there are differences among the cultural factors. In one culture, saying hello in the morning is a value. But in another country, when you say in the morning to, for example, a police, hello, he becomes suspicious that you are a criminal person. So, the meanings are not the same. You meant by your saying salam a real, as a matter of fact, greeting, but the audiences have different meaning. So the first one takes the positive meaning of the greetings, and the second one, the latter one, who is the policeman, takes the negative meaning. And also other factors. For example, in Iran, there is one issue which is complementation. What is complementation? For example, when you want to eat something, you offer it to the audience that you can join me. This is a kind of complementation. It is a kind of saying that you can join me. This is not a real one, but it is just for respecting, that I'm respecting you so you can join me. But I don't mean it, okay? But in the other countries, they don't understand this text. They don't understand the meaning. So they come and join. Other example, I heard in the radio a Muslim who went to a non-Muslim country in the West, and as the prescription of the religion, he started going to saying hello to the neighbors each morning or each week. He or she knocked the door. He said that I wanted to say hello to you, and can I come enter your home to be more familiar, to be more friend, and etc. So this is very Islamic, this is very religious fact, and it is very social, and it shows your sociability. But at the third or fourth, as far as I remember, at the third or fourth week, when the Muslim men went again and knocked the door and went inside the home of the neighbor, all of a sudden the policeman came and arrested the Muslim. Why? Because the person who was non-Muslim thought in his mind that maybe he's going to have some kinds of espionage. He's a spy. What is his intention of coming to my apartment or my flat each week? I don't understand it. It is a kind of, maybe he's looking to rob my goods, my furniture, my money, and etc. So if the M and M prime is not equal with 1, so the process of communication is interrupted. So this is very crucial formula for actually for all the communicators to ponder upon, that they have to research. For example, if you want to go to a country as a propagator or religious missionary, you have to first of all research about the cultures, about the values, belief system of that country, the people, and then start the communication. Because maybe you start from a point that is not appropriate. So M and M prime must be equal with 1. I want to elaborate on the process of communication more. We defined technically the process of communication as sending a message through a channel to a receiver with feedback. But I want to add some more elements to this process. First of all, let me define the process. What is process? Process means a cyclical way of communication. What does it mean? It is a systematic and dynamic way of communication. What does it mean? What is the definition of system? System says that if you give input to a processor, with this special and certain kind of input, a certain kind of output will come out of this processor, and then it has a kind of feedback. This is the definition of system. So in the process of communication, it is very important we have to know that this is a systematic way of cyclical communication. And why do we say cyclical? Because the sender who sent the message in the process of the taking the feedback will be receiver itself. So let's elaborate more. What is the process of communication? The process of communication, it is an elaboration on the previous definitions. The process of communication has 2 kinds of phases: transmission phase and the feedback phase. If a sender chooses a message and encodes this message, what does it mean, encoding? It means that you give a kind of special and certain, as a matter of fact, entity and nature to this message. For example, if you want to send a TV message, how you can send this movie, how you can send a show to the TV of the receiver. The facilities of the broadcast centers, for example, the audio-visual centers of each countries, for example, I don't know, each, for example, audio-visual center, they send the movie, the film, or the clip by encoding. They encode through some facilities to some digitals, to some, as a matter of fact, to some files. Then they send these files through the satellite to your TV. And then your TV, which is a kind of receiver, or it has a receiver box, it decodes the meaning that you encoded. So we have 2 new terms here, encoding and decoding. So when a sender chooses the message and encodes the message and sends it through a medium. Medium is the singular form of the media. So remember, don't pluralize this media itself to say medias. Medium is the singular form of the media. So when you encode and set this through a medium, and as a matter of fact, the receiver decodes the message, and after processing on the message he has gained and he or she has decoded or it decoded, it becomes a sender itself. We enter here into the second phase. We exit from the transmission phase now to the feedback phase. In the feedback phase, which is the second phase, the receiver becomes sender and sends the message through encoding and through the medium to the first sender, which is now a receiver. And it becomes a cyclical process of communication. So this is very technical definition. What is the benefit of it for us as the people who want to study communication and to study the good way of propagation? It has many denotations. First of all, the best way of communication is the communication which has feedback. Which kind of communication has feedback? If you are going to propagate or to do missionary job, okay, according to your religiosity, which is, of course, the propagation is not always necessarily meaning of converting. No. Even when you want to clarify your religion to people who has taken the malform of the religion, it is a kind of missionary job. It means that you remove the misunderstandings. So mass conversion is not, we don't mean by the missionary job a mass conversion, not at all. Just approximation of the minds. Just drinking a cup of coffee, a piece of cake, by itself is a real communication, or it can be a propagation by itself. So we mean that through this way, okay, actually we propagate better when you have feedback. In which type of communication you have feedback? For example, in face-to-face communication, in email communication. But in some types of communications, we don't have feedback. So the trustability and the influence of that communication is in its lowest level. For example, the message which is sent globally to all people. For example, advertisement messages, which is nowadays very popular. Okay? For example, the newspapers, the texts which are sent via the newspapers. It is the addressee of the newspaper is not a certain person. So it doesn't have feedback. When you read a newspaper, do you send a feedback to the news agency? No. But when you talk to your wife, to your family, if they do something which makes you happy, you smile. It is a feedback. So the best way of communication, and if you want to do propagation and introducing your religion, is by face-to-face, because it has feedback. Or if you are doing it in the cyberspace, it must have feedback. In a feedback which you choose the best message through the best medium or media and encode it properly. Encodation is very important because it must be relevant to the needs of the receiver. You have to encode the message to send it to receiver in a way that actually that receiver via decoding can understand your message. Okay, so This was, in short, the cyclical process of communication, which in this session we defined it very technically, and it had two phases of transmission phase and the feedback phase, and each of them are very important. And now I have to add that during this process of communication there are some noises. What does it mean? What does it mean, noise? Noises are the barriers of communication. For example, one kind of noise is physical barrier. Your tongue has problem, you cannot speak properly. It is a kind of noise. For example, you didn't use perfume, okay? Your body has a kind of bad smelling when you're talking to your audience. It is a noise. Okay? You have to take a shower in order to, if you want to influence your audience, you have to be very influential with neat appearance, to use perfumes and etc. Okay? So there are different types of noises. For example, the age by itself can be a noise, an interruption. For example, father, which is belonging to the first generation of a community, talks to his grandson or her grandson, which belongs to the third or fourth generation of the community. So they cannot understand because their age are not in parallel. Okay. Sometimes education can be a noise. You talk. You must, your communication must be based on the needs of the addressee and the audience. You are a PhD student or you are a university professor and you want to teach a guidance school student or the elementary student. So the level that you might talk can be very influential. Or for example, a philosopher is going to talk to a layman. So the level of education, the age, the gender, male and female, sometimes it can become barrier, and the words, the physical barriers, like the location. I'm here, you are in another country. It is a kind of barrier. If we were together, we would talk face to face, and it would be very probably more influential. Okay. However, it becomes noise. We'll talk about the noises or the barriers of the communication in detail. Just referring back to the first part of my speech as the conclusion, we talked about the meaning. So I asked the question that where is the meaning through the process of communication? Some scholars mention that the meaning is in the message itself. For example, you say apple, so the word apple has a meaning. Okay. Some other scholars say that the meaning is not in the message. The meaning is in the mind, the receiver's mind. For example, if I say apple to an animal, can the animal understand what do I say? No. Maybe some of them, like monkeys or horses, or some intelligent animals can understand. But normally animals don't have the intellectual or the brain like human beings. They cannot think like human beings. Okay, this is one of the differentiation, the crucial differentiation of man and the human beings and the animals, the faculty of thinking. So when you say apple to a cat, can the cat understand what you say? No. If the meaning is in the message, so why the cat didn't understand? So the second groups of ideas that the message or the meaning is in the mind of the receiver can be somehow true here. And some other scholars like Marshall McLuhan, one of the theorists of communication, say that the meaning is in the not in the message nor in the mind of the receiver, but in the channel. In other words, sometimes it's, the word of Marshall McLuhan is this, that the medium is channel itself. What does it mean? It means that, for example, if I use laptop when I want to talk to you, it has one type of influence in the audience which is different from using a tablet or a PC or just using a whiteboard or blackboard. Okay? The medium, they say the medium itself is the meaning. For example, if you want to show a movie, if you show it in the cinema, has one type of influence, and when you show the same movie in the satellite or the home television, it becomes different. So we had three ideas or three suppositions of the issue, that where is the meaning. Some scholars say that the meaning is in the message, some say in the mind of receiver, and some say that it is in the medium itself. And maybe we can say that the combination of these theories can be true too. Thank you very much for your attention. Inshallah, in our upcoming sessions, we will talk about more about communication and the definition of the communication and the elements and the process of communication. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.